Hello everyone, I am Dr. Deepa. Today we will learn about the topic the tongue. The tongue is the solid conical muscular organ located partially in the oral cavity and partly in the pharynx. The tongue mainly acts as the organ of taste and also the mastication, the deglutition as well as involved in the speech. Sometimes utilized in making gestures as well as postures of the facial expression. The tongue is clinically acting as the mirror in various disturbances of the alimentary tract as well. We will look onto the presenting parts of the tongue and also the structure of the tongue in detail in this video for today. The tongue represents the following parts. This tongue is conical in shape, as I have told, representing the tip and the base. The tongue, this is the oral cavity opened, representing the tip of the tongue and the base of the tongue. The tongue also has got two lateral borders on either side and two surfaces, that is the dorsal surface which is seen here and the inferior surface which is seen in this picture. So the tongue represents two ends, that is the tip and the base. It has got two borders, that is on either side there are two lateral borders, and it is represented by the two surfaces, that is the dorsal and the inferior surface as shown here. Moving on to the tip of the tongue. The tip of the tongue is directed straight forward and this tip is in contact with the incisor teeth. So the tip of the tongue is directed forward and is in contact with the incisor teeth. Opposite to the tip lies the base of the tongue. In this picture we can very neatly make out the base. So this is the tip or the apex of the tongue. This is the base of the tongue which is directed backwards, and it is the base of the tongue which lies in the oropharynx. So the base of the tongue is located in the oropharynx and the base is formed by the posterior 1/3 of the tongue as shown here. So the posterior 1/3 of the tongue itself makes up the base or the root of the tongue. This base of the tongue is in contact with the epiglottis present here. The epiglottis, which is the cartilage of the larynx, the root or the base of the tongue is in contact with the epiglottis by two folds, that is the median glossoepiglottic fold and the lateral glossoepiglottic fold on either side. Along the median plane, we look for the median glossoepiglottic fold which connects the anterior surface of the epiglottis with that of the base of the tongue, and on either side lies the lateral glossoepiglottic fold which connects the lateral side of the epiglottis to that of the base of the tongue. So this is about the attachment of the base of the tongue with that of the epiglottis. Moving on to the dorsal surface, as I have told, the surfaces are two in number. This is the dorsal surface. On the other hand lies the inferior surface. This dorsal surface is completely covered by the mucous membrane and it is convex on all the sides, usually pink in color. The mucous membrane along the dorsal surface is lined by the stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. The entire dorsal surface, as we can observe here, the entire dorsal surface including the base is divided into two parts. It is divided into two parts by the sulcus which is called as the sulcus terminalis. Sulcus terminalis. This sulcus terminalis divides the entire dorsum of the tongue into the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. The anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3, both of which are divided by the V-shaped sulcus which is called as the sulcus terminalis. So the area in front of the sulcus terminalis is termed, this area is termed as the presulcal part of the tongue. It is called as the presulcal part of the tongue, whereas the area behind the sulcus terminalis represents the postsulcal part, the postsulcal part of the tongue. So this is about the dorsum. The anterior two-third or the presulcal oral part of the tongue is covered by the mucous membrane, and in this case the presulcal part of the tongue, the mucous membrane here is adherent to the muscle coat. In this case, in the anterior two-third of the tongue, the mucous membrane of the tongue is adherent, it is attached to the muscle deep to it, to the muscle coat deep to it, due to the absence of the submucosal coat. And the mucous membrane is represented by the various elevations which are called as the papillae. So the anterior two-third is represented by the papillae. Each papillae are of different types. Each papillae is nothing but the projection of the lamina propria. Yes, the papillae are nothing but the projection of the lamina propria covered by the mucous membrane. They are of different types. This is the picture visualizing the dorsum of the tongue. As I have told, the dorsum of the tongue represents many elevations due to the presence of the papillae, which are nothing but the projections of the lamina propria covered by the mucous membrane. This is the diagrammatic view showing the presence of the papillae over the dorsal one-third, over the anterior the two-third part of the tongue, over the presulcal portion of the tongue. There are various types of the papillae. Number one is, the first variety is called as the vallet papillae, or it is also called as the circumvallate papillae, as they are circular in shape. These vallet papillae, as we can see, they are arranged in V-shaped linear pattern immediately in front of the sulcus terminalis. Immediately in front of the sulcus terminalis, the vallet papillae is seen, and these vallet papillae are the largest papillae among others present along its dorsum. So the largest papillae, that is the circumvallate papillae, are arranged in front of the sulcus terminalis. These circumvallate papillae are containing the taste buds on either side. The sides of the tongue is mainly concentrated with the papillae, which are called as fungiform papillae, which are rounded reddish elevations, and this fungiform papillae also contain the taste buds. So the fungiform papillae is present along the sides of the tongue and also the tip. The vallet papillae is present immediately in front of the sulcus terminalis. There is also third type of papillae, which are called as the filiform papillae, These are numerous and tiny in number. They are numerous tiny conical projections which they are present along the entire dorsum of the tongue, that is the anterior two-third of the tongue. They are the numerous tiny conical projection affecting the entire dorsal surface of the anterior two-third of the tongue. So this is about the filiform papillae. So the vallet papillae represents the groove on either side. The groove contain the taste buds laterally. The fungiform papillae, these are the broad projections present along the side, whereas the filiform papillae are conical in shape, present throughout the anterior two-third. The filiform papillae are devoid of the taste buds, whereas the fungiform papillae and the vallet papillae contain the taste buds. There is another type of taste bud which is called as the foliate papillae. This foliate papillae mentioned at the last because this folate papillae is not that very well appreciated in human tongue. They are more prominently seen developed in case of animal, especially seen in the rabbit's tongue. So this is all about the dorsal surface of the tongue. So the dorsal surface, that is the presulcal part of the dorsal surface, is mainly containing the papillae. Moving on to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue or the base of the tongue. The base of the tongue is covered by the mucous membrane. It is covered by the mucous membrane and they are devoid of the papillae. So the posterior 1/3 of the tongue does not contain the papillae. They don't contain the papillae at all. Other than the papillae, the base of the tongue contain the aggregation of the lymphatic mass, which is called as the lingual tonsil. So the posterior 1/3 of the dorsal surface contain the aggregated lymphatic follicles known as the lingual tonsil. So lingual tonsil are present along the base of the tongue. This posterior 1/3 of the tongue is containing the mucous membrane, which is devoid of papillae, and this mucous membrane along the base is separated from the underlying muscle by the loose submucosal coat. So the posterior 1/3, in the posterior 1/3 or the base, the submucosal coat is present. So it contains the submucosal coat. The submucosa is present in the posterior 1/3 of the tongue or the base of the tongue. So the submucosa contains the submucosa in the posterior 1/3 contain many glands, that is the serous and the mucous glands, along with many lymphatic aggregation which make up the lingual tonsils. So this is about the dorsal surface of the tongue. This is the picture, the atlas picture showing the dorsal surface of the tongue. As I have already told, the dorsal surface is divided into two parts, that is the root or the base of the tongue in its posterior 1/3 and the anterior 2/3, making up the area containing the papillae. It is divided by the sulcus terminalis. One important thing which is to be noted is the presence of the foramen cecum along the sulcus terminalis. Foramen cecum is the part present along the center of the sulcus terminalis. This foramen cecum is the central depression which indicates the commencement of the median thyroid rudiment as the thyroglossal duct. It represents the thyroglossal duct. So this is about the dorsal surface. As I have already told regarding the papillae is present, the anterior 2/3 of the dorsal containing the papillae. So this is the filiform papillae. So as I have told, the filiform papillae are the numerous tiny conical projection. They are conical projections of the mucous membrane. The fungiform papillae are broad and they contain the taste buds. They also contain the taste bud. The filiform papillae is devoid of the taste buds. The fungiform papillae contain the taste buds, and the largest of all is the circumvallate papillae. The circumvallate papillae This circumvallate papillae also contains taste buds along its sides. The filiform papillae represents an additional feature, that is the part of the apical portion of the filiform papillae is keratinized. So there is keratin present in the filiform papillae. The part of the epithelium contains the keratin that is seen in the filiform papillae. So this is about the types of the papillae. Moving on to the inferior surface of the tongue. The inferior surface of the tongue is covered by the mucous membrane and it is devoid of papillae, and it is reflected onto the floor of the mouth. This inferior surface represents the following feature. Number one is the frenulum linguae. Frenulum linguae is nothing but the fold of the mucous membrane. It is nothing but the fold which connects the inferior surface with that of the floor of the mouth. It connects the inferior surface of the tongue with that of the floor of the mouth. On either side of the frenulum lies the sublingual papillae, as we can see here. On either side of the frenulum lies the presence of the sublingual papillae. This sublingual papillae allows the opening of the submandibular duct. So, on each side of the sublingual papillae lies the base of the frenulum through which the submandibular duct opens into. On each side of the frenulum, on each side of this median frenulum lies the plica. So, the plica fimbriata is the mucosal fold which is present on either side of the frenulum, and we can make out the presence of the deep lingual vein which lies between the frenulum and the plica in between. So, the deep lingual vein is also represented present along the inferior surface. So, along the median plane lies the frenulum linguae. Then next comes the deep lingual vein, and the lateral most lies the plica fimbriata on either side of the inferior surface. So, this is all about the inferior surface. When we talk about the lateral margins of the tongue, each margin is covered by the mucous membrane and the palatoglossal arch. This palatoglossal arch is attached to the margins of the tongue and the anterior two-third. As we can see in this picture, this is the palatoglossal arch. So, we can make out the palatoglossal arch or the palatoglossal fold over here. So, this palatoglossal fold connects the side of the tongue with that of the palate, that is the soft palate. So, on each side the lateral margin represents the palatoglossal arch which lies at the junction of the anterior two-third and the posterior one-third. The root of the tongue is that part of the tongue which attaches the tongue with that of the floor of the mouth, and this root extends from the symphysis mentis to that of the hyoid bone. So, the root is different from that of the base. The root is that part of the tongue which is attached to the floor of the mouth, and it is seen extending from the symphysis mentis to that of the hyoid bone. So, this is about the root of the tongue, and the root is always formed. The root of the tongue is formed by the muscle, that is the lower fibers of genioglossus muscle. The lower fibers of the muscle genioglossus. Genioglossus forms the root of the tongue. So, this root of the tongue, which is formed by the lowermost fibers of the genioglossus, is seen extending. This genioglossus muscle is seen extending from the symphysis mentis to that of the hyoid bone. So, this is about the root of the tongue. This is about the root of the tongue. This is the diagram showing the section of the tongue where we can make out the entire thickness of the tongue, as we can appreciate over here. The epithelium, this is the epithelium lining the mucous membrane. Deep to the epithelium lies the lamina propria. This is the lamina propria containing the glands, the serous and the mucous gland, along with the lymphatic follicles, which is seen only along the posterior one-third or the base, which makes up the lingual tonsil, and the bottommost containing the muscular layer of the tongue. So, this is about the structure of the tongue. The epithelium represents a special feature which are called the taste bud. So, as the epithelium of the tongue, the mucous membrane of the tongue represents lot many papillae, which are nothing but the elevations of the lamina propria covered by the mucous membrane. The elevations of the lamina propria covered by the mucous membrane, as I have already discussed about the various shapes of the papillae, types of the papillae like the fungiform papillae, the valid papillae, as well the filiform papillae, which are more numerous, seen as a conical projection. The taste bud, this is the enlarged picture showing the section of the taste bud. The taste bud lines the epithelium of the tongue. It is the modified epithelial cell which is arranged as a spherical mass within the epithelium itself, covering the tongue. So these taste buds, the taste bud is mainly located in certain areas of oral cavity and the pharynx. Other than the tongue, the taste buds are present along the palatoglossal fold. It is present along the palatoglossal fold. It is present along the posterior surface of the epiglottis. Posterior surface of the epiglottis, which is the cartilage of the larynx, the posterior surface of the epiglottis. The taste buds are also seen in the soft palate, that is the inferior surface of the soft palate, the inferior surface of the soft palate. So all these are the parts where the taste buds are present. So we can appreciate the taste buds in the palatoglossal fold. We can appreciate the taste bud in the epiglottis, that is the posterior surface. The taste buds are also present in the inferior surface of the soft palate. So the taste bud, when we talk on to the structure of the taste bud, these taste buds are made up of two types of cell. One is the supporting cell, or called as the sustentacular cell, and second is the sensory cell. Along the inner part of the bud, the inner portion of the bud contains the sensory cells which carries the sensory nerve endings. They are the sensory cell. These sensory cells on either side are covered by the sustentacular cell or the supporting cell. The open portion of the upper part of this taste bud is called as the gustatory pore. So this is about the structure of the taste buds. So this functionally, the four types of subjective taste sensation are appreciated by the tongue. That is, the sweet and the salt sensation is appreciated at the tip of the tongue. So the tip of the tongue mainly gives the appreciation of the sweet and the salt taste. The sweet and the salt taste. The sides give the appreciation of the sour taste or the acidic taste. The sour taste is appreciated along the sides of the tongue, and the bitter taste is appreciated. The bitter taste is appreciated along the pharyngeal part, that is the posterior part of the tongue. So the along the posterior part, the bitter taste is appreciated. The bitter taste is appreciated. So this is about the distribution of the taste appreciation from the papillae present over the anterior two-third. So that's all about the structure of the tongue, the presenting parts of the tongue, the inferior surface containing the vein, along with in detail about the taste buds. So in next video we will look on to the muscles of the tongue and the nerve supply and the blood supply, including the clinical anatomy of the tongue, in our next coming video. Thank you.